was thinking of becoming a counsellor.
Think again.
Sorry?
It's tough. Of the 30 counsellors I trained, only 8 are still working in the profession, as far as I know. Counsellors have to have emotional stamina as well as physical and mental stamina.
Oh.
Counselling's by far the most demanding job I've ever done, and I've done some tough jobs in my time. I did 2 years in the army.
What happened to the counsellors who dropped out?
Some relapsed back to their former addiction, even though I've always made it a rule that counsellor trainees are at least 2 years clean from alcohol and drugs, and all mood-altering prescription drugs, before they begin their training.
So why did they relapse?
Perhaps they imagined that working on the 12 steps all day with patients meant that they didn't need to work them for themselves any longer.
That's sad.
Yes, it is. I wouldn't have taken them on if they hadn't been both intellectually bright and emotionally stable.
I hope I am.
We'll soon find out. Other counsellors found the work too tough. Addicts of all kinds are very challenging as patients. They wallow in blame and self-pity. They're full of expectations and demands. They know all the answers to everything. Do you really want to do this work?
Yes, I do. I want to share my own benefits of recovery.
If you're on a crusade to save the world, forget it. I want professionals on my staff, not bleeding hearts.
That's very tough.
I have to be tough. This is a tough job.
Why?
Addiction's a relapsing condition. Some addicts die. Former patients we knew and liked, but who didn't follow our suggestions. But many more of our 5,000 patients would have died if they'd not been through our rehab.
It must be wonderful to save lives.
I have to keep my feet on the ground. My job, as I see it, is to generate the ideas and activities that are most likely to lead to long-term recovery.
Surely the 12-step program does that?
Yes, it does. But the purpose of a rehab is to get a larger number of people into recovery than would be the case if they simply attended the anonymous fellowships.
So how many people do you get better?
The recovery rate of rehabs on their own, without continuing regular attendance at the fellowships afterwards, is 0. As I said, patients have to follow our suggestions about what to do after they leave rehab.
But it must be very difficult for you and the other staff when former patients die.
If you can't take the heat in this particular profession, you shouldn't be in this kitchen.
I just don't know yet.
That's fair enough. But perhaps you will understand if I do everything I can to discourage you from working in this field. I don't want you or the patients to be damaged.
Nor do I. But as an addict myself, I thought my experience would be valuable.
If you weren't an addict, I wouldn't even have interviewed you. Our patients wouldn't trust anyone other than other addicts.
Surely they have to trust doctors and nurses and psychologists.
And that's different. I've had many of those professionals on my staff, but they played no part in the group work that's the essential therapy. Their function was simply to do their primary work and provide information. Our patients would have run rings around them in group or in individual counselling sessions.
Didn't you help to establish the first MSc training course in addiction psychology?
Yes, I did. But that gives only a paper qualification, like my medical degrees. It doesn't guarantee the only thing that really matters.
What's that?
Talent, natural skill.
How'd you get that?
You have to be born with it. Training courses can improve it, but they can't give it to you if you haven't got it in the first place.
Do you think I've got it?
Tell me what you've done in the creative part of your life. Have you written a book, played a musical instrument, climbed a mountain, or gone potholing?
I played the drums in a pop band.
Wonderful. That's just what I'm looking for. You have something to say in life. The addicts we have as patients will respect that.
Why?
Because addicts tend to be highly creative. People often imagine that creative people become addicts. It's the other way round. When you're born into an addictive family, the world doesn't make sense. So you stick out your antennae and learn whatever survival skills you can. And that makes you highly creative.
Well, my family's totally nuts. Dad's on the piss, Mum takes her little helpers, and my sister's bulimic.
That's exactly the background qualification I'm looking for. You'll have the instinctive understanding needed for this work. But I shall not be getting you to work with families.
Why not? Surely with my family background I can tell other families what to do or not to do.
That's exactly what would worry me. Families need to be given basic information about addictive disease and recovery, but most of all, they need to be understood and supported over what they tried to do.
I can do that.
You're not old enough to have had the personal experience of disaster and despair that you need in order to be able to help families. Other addicts will listen to you. Families will not. Forget about it.
So what should I do?
For the first 3 months, sit in group and say nothing at all. I don't know if you can observe and hear.
That should be easy enough.
Wait and see. After each group, I shall ask you what you saw and heard. I need to hear from you what didn't happen as well as what did, and learn to look for the non-verbal communications.
How do I do that?
By learning not to look at the speaker, hear and see all the psychological games that patients play. Pay attention to the quiet ones as well as the noisy ones. Be aware of what's happening beside you as well as on the other side of the group. The whole purpose of a group is to get the patients to talk to each other. You can learn how to achieve that with a simple hand gesture.
Isn't that rather rude?
No. The counsellor's job is to guide the traffic. Get everyone involved. Be imaginative and watch the clock. The whole art of running a group is to keep it moving and make sure that everyone is involved and has the opportunity to say something. Otherwise, it isn't group therapy at all. It's a series of one-to-one sessions in a group setting. That's totally ineffective. Addicts have to learn to work with each other as preparation for long-term attendance at meetings in the anonymous fellowships.
But do you do one-to-ones at all?
Yes, I do nowadays, but I learned everything in group. Counsellors who don't have group skills really don't know what they're doing in one-to-ones. Patients are very complex creatures.
That sounds scary.
In unskilled hands, group therapy, psychodrama, or any other practical therapeutic process such as gestalt therapy or EMDR can be dangerous.
I don't know if I can do that.
That's why I shall want you to get special training in those therapeutic approaches, and also in choice theory, transactional analysis, mindfulness, and positive psychology. And we can discuss any other therapeutic approach that particularly interests you.
That's a huge amount to learn.
Counselling is a profession, not a game. Now you know why I wanted to find out what natural skills you have.
What about cognitive behavioural therapy that everyone talks about?
Doctors love it because it enables them to show patients how clever they are. As far as patients are concerned, CBT is a wonderful therapy. Addicts think perfectly well, but too well at times. Our problem as addicts is in our feeling brains. We therefore need feeling treatments.
But you don't like pharmaceutical drugs.
I certainly don't. They stop feeling stone dead. I think the human brain functions perfectly well without them, particularly in an emotionally supportive environment.
But my rehab used to put people on antidepressants and mood stabilizers as well sometimes because they had dual diagnosis.
Medical insurance companies usually cover depression but not addiction, so patients may be given a dual diagnosis so that the rehab costs are covered. Also, doctors will often prescribe drugs so that they can't be blamed if something does go terribly wrong for doing nothing.
That's their job, to prescribe drugs, isn't it?
That's not the way I would look at it with my clinical experience. Pharmaceutical drug addiction is the most challenging addiction of all because the patient has to cast down rationalization. My doctor gave them to me. Detoxification from pharmaceutical drugs is fiendishly difficult, physically and emotionally. They're the ultimate designer drugs.
What other pharmaceutical drugs are difficult to come off?
tranquilizers, sleeping tablets, methadone, painkillers. Antidepressants, which are sometimes used in the treatment of eating disorders or in involutional melancholia, are also highly addictive to addicts.
What on earth is involutional melancholia?
It's what other people might call depression. I use the term involutional melancholia, the mind turning in on itself in misery, to make people stop to think before automatically giving or taking pharmaceutical drugs.
But I'd heard you don't like drugs at all.
I like drugs for physical problems. They save lives. And I like psychiatric drugs, initially, for acute psychoses. But I certainly don't like tranquilizers, antidepressants, or sleeping tablets. There are better ways of treating emotional problems than by using drugs that are highly addictive to people like us who have addictive natures.
What about addictive behaviours such as gambling or exercise or shopping and spending or sex and love addiction or alcoholism or internet addiction?
I created the first rehab in the UK, and possibly anywhere, to treat all those addictive behaviours, as well as the first in the UK to treat eating disorders alongside alcohol and drug problems. Patients usually have a range of addictive behaviours.
I thought anorexia was the most challenging compulsive behaviour.
Anorexia certainly is challenging because of the double negative. How do you get someone not to not do something?
And I gather you're anti-smoking.
I certainly am. Addicts who smoke have double the relapse rate of non-smokers.
But many rehabs treat only drug addicts and alcoholics.
Rehabs who say they don't treat eating disorders and other addictive behaviours are simply neglecting those problems in the patients in front of them.
My sponsor in AA told me not to give up smoking straight away and not to bother about other addictions. Don't drink and go to meetings was the mantra she recited every day.
That's an excellent beginning, but there's no point in giving up one addiction and then picking up another. We need to be abstinent right across the board if we're to reduce relapse rate and achieve full spiritual recovery.
No wonder they call you a maverick.
I wear that badge with pride.